What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and as much as I love covering the main Fall of X storyline, I do like covering some other stuff. And so while this does take place during Fall of X and it does reference it, it's also kind of separate at the same time. But the ending to this is crazy. So for those of you guys who didn't see the first video that we made, the only real takeaway from that is that at some point in time, Wolverine and Ghost Rider had basically met one another as they were both pursuing a kid named Bram. Their paths just happened to cross. They kind of fought each other a little bit, but Bram is basically this person out there that is either possessed by demonic power or his inherent mutant ability or inherent power, whatever it happens to be, is to channel demonic energy. I argue that he's powered by Demon Bear, but he's basically returned. So you have Wolverine and Ghost Rider teaming up to track this guy down. Now, one of the things that they realize in their journeys as they come across this just kind of gigantic crime scene with all these police lights and everything is that not every mutant was forced off of Earth by Orcus, that some of them actually went into hiding. These particular mutants were hiding in the wood. Now, one of the things that I want to specify is that while Bram is tracking down and killing different mutants across the Earth, he doesn't really seem to be associated directly with Orcus. But the ending of this may very well change your mind, and I'm kind of curious to see how you feel about it. But what goes on here is that in an effort to, at the very least, analyze this crime scene and see what's going on, Wolverine and Ghost Rider actually pose as what are basically forensics guys. So once they get to like the main crime scene itself, dressing up in disguises, they literally tell the cops just go ahead and get out of there while they analyze the whole scene. And in that moment, the Ghost Rider tries to manifest. Now that's one of the things to remember about what Benjamin Percy's doing right now with the Ghost Rider comics. It's very much a return to the old Ghost Rider stories from way back in the day, which is to say the Ghost Rider persona is almost like a demonic barometer, right? The closer they get to demonic or evil or corrupt or somehow negative energy, the more the Ghost Rider persona tries to manifest. And so in this moment, it's just kind of frustrated by the fact that it can't come out and they can't just wipe out anybody who's doing anything that's particularly evil. Now, again, that's an important distinction to understand because in their travels, they're surrounded at all times by people who are just doing really bad stuff. Maybe it's a drug dealer, maybe it's this person doing this or that person doing that. And the Ghost Rider wants to punish them. But because the focus of Johnny Blaze is literally just this like tunnel vision on Bram, it ultimately forces the Ghost Rider persona to kind of keep itself at bay. But what ends up happening here is Wolverine calls in a favor with Jeff Bannister. Now, Jeff Bannister was introduced to us in the main Wolverine comics. The only thing you really need to know within the confines of this story is that he's a contact that Wolverine has in the CIA. And so what it does is it allows Wolverine and Ghost Rider to use a kind of satellite office to basically analyze everything that's going on with regards to this mutant DNA, any kind of common trail they may have that may give them some measure of information. Now, initially, Wolverine's idea is to hunt down anything or track down anything that has to do with mutants, and it makes perfect sense just because of the fact that Bram is killing mutants. It's the best place to start. But from Johnny Blaze's perspective, this guy just reeks of demonic energy. So the best thing they can do is to actually analyze anything out there that has to do with demonology, right? That's the best route that they can go, because while following the mutant trail would inevitably lead them to Bram, the idea of Johnny Blaze is following this trail will basically get us there faster. Now, the information that they're able to glean is somewhat helpful, but it doesn't give them like a direct beeline. Instead, it basically sends them on the path to the orphanage that Bram was at when he was a younger kid. Because remember, when they initially encountered Bram in their younger years, they didn't really know anything about him, right? Like Wolverine met the little kid at some point, but because of the fight that took place between Wolverine and Ghost Rider, Bram had basically gotten away, right? He was removed from the whole situation, and there was no conceivable way to locate him again. So the best place they could possibly do was get to this orphanage and then just kind of go from there. What ends up happening is that once they get in there, the guy who runs the orphanage initially thinks like they're cops or they're like reporters or something along those lines because they're asking questions about the quote unquote orphan murders from back in the day, a very well publicized event when it originally happened. But as Johnny Blaze is walking through there, the ghostwriter persona tells him to open a door that he comes across, which has all these different locks on the outside. When he does, like when he actually opens this door, there's a kid inside who's basically stuck in one half of an Iron Maiden. And he basically tells him, like, he puts us in here when we're bad. And in this moment, Johnny Blaze plays the game of yes, but maybe. Yes, it's important to keep the ghostwriter persona under control, but maybe, maybe this is the time to just let it out. So he tells the kid, like, run, you need to leave. You don't want to see what's about to happen next. And that's when the ghostwriter persona pops out, because this guy is in effect tormenting orphans. And so Wolverine's response here is, okay, something you got to understand, man, this room has now become what we call the truth room. And this is your chance to tell the truth, lest you spend the rest of your days in agonizing pain and suffering. Now, what we see here is something that we actually haven't seen in the Ghostwriter comics recently. And a lot of you guys have asked about that. A lot of you guys have asked, when are we going to see the Ghostwriter do the penance stare? And that's exactly what we get. It's this amazing moment, right, where he says the way to extract information is through pain and penance. And he gives this guy the penance stare. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what the penance stare is, it's basically an ability of the Ghostwriter to force a person to feel all the pain they've ever inflicted anybody all at one time. Now, the penance stare is used in different ways. Sometimes it's used as a form of punishment, and literally it just kind of leaves the person in a catatonic state. Sometimes it'll kill them, sometimes they'll go insane, but in this instance, it's being used for information. So I would go so far as to argue it may very well not be the full-on penance stare with the 100% potency that you normally see, because this guy's still conscious. He's still living, right? Like, I mean, he hasn't been driven to the point of insanity and is like clawing his eyes out of his head, you know, out of just complete and total madness. But what he does is he simply says, somebody was here a month ago, someone asking the same questions. They took the files on Bram. And so despite the fact that the files are gone, Ghostwriter is able to kind of see the files in his own mind, because of course this guy had witnessed the files as well. Those memories are transferred. They're of course in turn transferred to Wolverine, and that's when he gets to see the totality of the nature of Bram. That ever since this kid was little, right, like when he was first brought to the orphanage, this has been his whole shtick, right? Like going through and basically tormenting, mutilating the whole nine yards, any number of things, but just appearing incredibly disturbed. And in fact, there was a particular instance here when there was a suspicion of him having like schizophrenia. Of course, we also learn his name is Bram Stroud. And so with this information, Ghostwriter in turn informs Wolverine, the man who removed the files worked for the government. He had a federal warrant. The address listed should be familiar to us both. Hell's Backbone in Utah, where we raced the devil once before, right? That took place in the Ghostwriter comics. It was a pretty cool moment because Wolverine basically ripped a demon out of Ghostwriter's head. It was pretty dope, right? But he says it's a frail spot, a place where things spill over, a perfect location for their research. What's happening here is research is being conducted regarding a Hellfire addition to the Weapons Plus program, which is exciting. For those of you guys who don't know what this is, right? Anybody who's been reading Wolverine long enough knows that like Weapons Plus, like when they come into the mix, that's when things get amazing. Because Weapons Plus started out as kind of a precursor to Project Wide Awake, right? Going with Grant Morrison's X-Men run, Weapons Plus was an anti-mutant government agenda that was kind of an orchestration between the United States CIA and then eventually Canada's Department H. Captain America was Weapon 1, right? Grant Morrison's X-Men established that. And then you got Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to Weapon 10, which is Wolverine, also known as Weapon X. The whole idea behind Weapons Plus is to basically just create super soldiers. And if they're able to find a way to harness a being with demonic power that can in turn be used for their own purposes, I mean, it would dwarf anything and everything that came before. There's no telling what could come out of this. So with that being said, guys, normally we link to the Fall of X. If you guys want to get caught up on Weapons of Vengeance as well as Ghostwriter and Wolverine, make sure you click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.